Hello and welcome to another edition of the In Context podcast. This week's episode will see Rachel Williamson interviewing Jas Goodyear, and she will be sharing her experience as being raised as a pastor's kid on a council estate in Brighton, and how she and her husband Shane are raising their children as part of a church plant on a council estate in London. Hope you enjoy this episode.
Thanks for joining me today, Jas, or this evening rather. Just thought we'd have a little chat through some questions regarding ministry, and I know you've got a lot of experience in ministry and council estate ministry in particular. If you just start off kind of, introducing yourself and your family and where you're based.
Yeah, so I'm married to Shane. We have 4 young kids. Alfie's 8, Hope is 6, Levi is 4, and Steph is 2. We're currently living in Vauxhall, so very central London. We're part of a church, Hope Church Vauxhall, that was planted about 7 years ago. And it's a very local church, and that the heart of it is to be we're very much on the estate and a church for the local people in the community, and it's been a real blessing being there. We have a real wide range of people that come from the community, which is great. And we're looking to plant a new church. I don't know if I told you that, but
No.
We're
Good.
planting literally on the next door estate, and so me and Shane will be, God willing, joining that plant. We don't need to move house because it's on the estate that we actually live on. It's called the Ethelred estate, so we live on the Ethelred estate. We go to the church that's on the next door estate. It's literally 7-minute walk one way, but we're going to be even closer to where we live, which is funny. But I grew up in Brighton. My mum and dad weren't from a Christian home, but they got converted in their late teens, early 20s, got married quite quick. They've got quite a amazing sort of testimony how they got saved and got together. But quite soon after they got married, had me, I think I was 4. My mum had my sister already, so when they got married, they would have had my sister, and then got married, had me, and then they moved to Brighton because one of the guys that was very key in them coming to faith, he used to go on holiday to a council estate in Brighton where his nan lived. So every summer he'd go to Moulscoombe. And so he always had a big heart for the area and wanted to plant a church. And when my mum and dad got saved, basically him and my mum and dad, and then I think there was a team of 8 people or something like that. They kind of got together, moved on to the estate in Brighton and planted a church. So my mum and dad, my dad was the assistant pastor, I guess, at first, which at the time you don't realise it because they're your parents and you sort of look up to them and you think they know everything because they're parents and whatever. But looking back, I'm like, wow, they were in their early 20s, very young believers, not really from a churched Christian background at all, planting a church on an estate. It was kind of crazy, really. But it was good. It was a good experience for me. And then, so I went to that church my whole sort of childhood and teenage years. And then when I was 18, I moved to London. Moved to another council estate and was in a church there on a council estate, did an internship. That's where I met my husband Shane, and then we moved, and Shane was then a missionary with London City Mission, and he was based in Vauxhall, and then so that's how we ended up in Vauxhall.
And so going back then, sort of your time in Brighton on the growing up, how did you find your experience on I mean, obviously just living on the council estate would have been normal for you because you didn't live elsewhere. How did you find it in terms of being from a Christian home, going into school, into obviously secular friends? Were you a Christian at that point, or what point did you come to faith? How did you, once you'd come to faith, how did you kind of cope in a school environment or on the estate with presumably less, hardly any Christians around you, but in a tough area?
So as a kid, I wasn't a Christian, and I knew I wasn't a Christian. And I enjoyed school. I definitely felt almost like a bit embarrassed maybe about the fact that we were Christians. Like at that time as well, like in Brighton is obviously a very secular place. Like church and Christianity is just weird. Whereas like where I am in London now, it's very different. I would say like the spiritual openness is much different. There's lots of people from different cultures and different religious backgrounds. But where I grew up, it was absolutely not. It was just very secular, very atheistic. It was kind of the new atheism was very much in the air. And a lot of very progressive liberal ideas that were kind of contradictory to what, you know, I believed in. So I was kind of embarrassed, I guess, a bit about that. I think I felt like we were also a little bit, I guess, compared to my friends from the council estate, I guess we seemed a bit more stable, and that was a good thing. And I was thankful for that. Like I could see in lots of my friends were from much less stable homes and stuff like that. But yeah, I had a lot of great friends, and there was like a particular family down the road that had like 6 sisters and 1 brother, and we just used to play up and down on the street constantly with them. We had a great time. I had a great childhood in that respect. We were always just out and about at friends, up the road, down the road, pushing trolleys around or whatever. I don't playing manhunt and things like that, playing in each other's trampolines and paddling pools and that sort of thing. So my childhood memories are very happy on the whole. I had a lot of good friends. I think definitely in school. I in terms of spiritually, when I was about 5, I remember waking up in the night and I was like very scared, and wanted to go down to my mum and dad's bedroom, but felt like I was too old to do that now. But I knew that I needed to ask for God's forgiveness. If I wanted his protection, like, well, just in my 5-year-old head, I thought that. And so I did pray then for God to forgive me and to be so that he would like look after me. But I didn't really ever follow that up. And I was very aware throughout my through my childhood years, that with my friends, I was one person, and like in church, I was another. And like, I was also a very good kid, like quote unquote. Like I think my identity in my household, in my home, was like I was the good kid. I was good at school. I was good for my parents, and so I didn't really. But I didn't really let my naughtiness out or anyone to see that, apart from maybe when I was with my friends by myself. Even things like swearing. I remember one time one of my friends grasping me up and telling my dad, "Jasmine always swears at school," and I was like, "No, I don't." You know, didn't want to be honest about that, but spiritually I kind of knew. And then when I was 10, we was on a family Bible camp, and that's when I gave my life to the Lord. I had the preaching that week on the family Bible camp was about heaven and hell, and at the end of the week there was just the scripture read out about the wide and narrow path, and then I just got a really clear picture of myself. It was like in a crowd just walking, and like as it zoomed out, I saw myself on the path heading straight towards hell. And I just knew, like, if I carried on living like this kind of half Christian, half non-Christian life, that I knew that I was going to I knew that I wasn't going to heaven, basically. And I felt like I wanted to get on the path, but I guess in the middle ground, maybe I was before that, maybe I was a Christian but wasn't really living it. I'm not too sure. Like I had some kind of faith, I had some kind of belief. And I used to talk a lot about spiritual things, and I did sometimes even try to tell my friends about God. And I remember even one time my teacher, when I was like in year 5, my teacher asked me to read the Bible story about, I think it was Easter time, actually, funny enough, Easter now, and to share a bit about my faith, and I got to like tell the whole class. And so like there were times when I would kind of feel a bit brave to talk about it, but most of the time I was kind of embarrassed, kind of cared more about fitting in. And I think as a kid, you know, yes, there was probably some naughty stuff there, but it wasn't, you know, bad language or whatever. But it's not so severe as when you're older and you get into much worse stuff. So I think for me, it was good that I then became a Christian when I was 10. And I really believed then, like, no, I'm going to be a Christian. And I felt much more kind of convicted about not being like a double life. And then
how did that kind of go into your teen years in secondary school?
So my teen years, the other thing I would say as well, sorry, just going back as well, is that my my dad, I think, was a very good influence on me, and I think one of the things he did really well was like expose me to um other beliefs other than just Christianity. And he didn't try and just teach me what to believe about the Bible, but he really kind of challenged like why we believe these things, and like was quite into critical thinking. And I think so I'll come on to why that I think was important later. But so he would talk about the Bible a lot. We didn't really do well at having like family devotions and stuff like that. My dad tried to introduce it a few times, bless him, but we didn't really make that easy for him. It wasn't good. But what he was really good at was just having like chats with me about theological stuff, and he'd say things like, do you think people can lose their salvation? And I'll be like, no. And then he'd say, well, what about this? And he'd read out, the text in Hebrews where it sounds like you can lose your salvation. And then I would be like, oh, okay, maybe I think. And he wouldn't always necessarily even give me the answer, but he would just be very comfortable with being like showing me stuff and where there are doubts, or prodding my faith, or getting me to question it and think about it, and like just chat those things out. And so I think that meant that later on in my teen years, when I became exposed to more stuff, that stuff didn't freak me out or make me like, and even now, like I can listen to different people's opinions and points of views, and it doesn't worry me or make me think, oh, I'm not really a Christian, like, because I think that's part of the Christian life, is being able to defend the faith and look at these things critically, and do I actually believe it for myself, or am I just being taught this, or do I actually think that this has legs and this is true? And so I really valued that. And so I think in my teen years, well, firstly, my dad didn't send me to the local secondary school. He'd sent my older sister to the local secondary school, but it was really a very, very deprived, and it was just a bad school, not because of the kids, because of the teachers, really, and some of the experiences that my dad had had with, for example, knowing that my older sister had been skiving, and then they told him that she had 100% attendance, and he was like, well, I know she doesn't, because I've caught her skiving multiple times. They were like, well, try to just let kids off the first few times and things like that. He was just like, I can't. And so he sent me to the Catholic school, which was in Hove, so it was a bit more, across the city. And so that was my first exposure to like non-council estate life, and like meeting kind of posher kids. There were a few kind of kids from a council estate. There were more posh kids. So that's when I first noticed about class and the class differences, and when I first met middle class people that weren't Christians, because I just thought that Christians were middle class. You know what I mean? And I thought that being a Christian is being, because all the other Christians other than my parents that I knew were middle class. It was kind of like Christians are like this and non-Christians are like this. Christians are middle class and non-Christians are council estate. And then when I went to my secondary school, I realised that there's like people that are like Christians but they're not Christians. And that was like when I first became aware of that. And I think the culture of like middle class Brighton Christians was very it was very different to what I'd grown up with when my friends from my council estate, and that was a bit of a struggle to work out how to socialize with those people, and thinking through like who I was, and trying to fit in but be myself and that kind of stuff. And I was a Christian as well, so then there was also the element of being a Christian, and it was a Catholic school, so it was very there was some like religious stuff, but no one really believed it. Everyone was really like, it was just like a tradition thing, but no one actually had any real faith. I mean, I say no one, there was like one or two people maybe. And my older sister and my younger sister, just underneath me, both had quite like a rebellious phase. And I saw that, and I thought, I'm not doing that. I didn't want to go down that road, of kind of going into it just didn't appeal to me, the going out drinking and things like that. And again, the sort of stuff that my friends would, like, I had quite a good group of friends when I first went to secondary school, but then as they started getting older and doing more stuff, that was just really, just weird stuff. I don't know if I really even say on the camera, but it wasn't just like going down the park, and my council estate friends, they would go down the park with a few drinks or whatever and sit and smoke and have drinks or whatnot. But these guys were doing odd stuff that was just like demonic or something. I don't even know. It was just like I knew that I couldn't really even be around it, and so I had to stop kind of hanging out with them a lot outside of school. And then that obviously means that in school, you kind of don't have the same, they're all talking about what they got up to at this, that, and the other, and you just kind of slowly, I just kind of got pushed out more and more, and I was also kind of okay with that. Like I kind of felt, I had a few close friends, but I just didn't really know how to like hang out with these guys and be a Christian. I sort of, like I said, I tried for a few times going out and being a good example, or in the hope that maybe could still maintain some connection, but I tried to invite friends to like youth clubs and stuff like that, but they just weren't really interested, and I just didn't really know how to do that. And so it was quite lonely, I would say, my secondary school years. And then in church, the church that I was at was very small. It was like on the council estate, and again, there wasn't tons of youth, and the youth that were there, I don't know if they were really fully Christians. I had some amazing youth leaders who were really brilliant. Still good friends with today, and I think they really show the value and the importance of like relationships in church that aren't just peer to peer, but like to youngers. And they did a lot with us, and they really made church life fun and enjoyable, and so loved just going and hanging out at their house and being discipled by them. But I didn't really have many peers, Christian peers, and I tried going to, I remember speaking to my dad about it one time, and he said, well, why don't you try going to the city church? And I so I went along to their youth group, and again, it was quite difficult to really gel or fit in properly because they had all established their friendships from very young. There were a few girls that really did like try and take me under their wing a bit, and that were great, but I definitely felt overall quite isolated as a Christian throughout my teen years, and trying to kind of walk faithfully as a Christian. And it wasn't easy, but like I say, God provides what you need when you need it, and like the relationships that I had with other members of the church were really valuable to me, and God taught me a lot through it. So
and do you think because council estate churches tend to be small plants, do you think it brings extra value in the sense, like you say, then it forces in your case, you to have older women disciple you? And because and I've noticed in sort of larger middle class churches, it tends to be more segregated. The youth sit there, the families sit there. They kind of I'm not saying all the time, but seem to not overlap. Where you don't have that, do you? Because everyone just has to muddle in and.
Yeah, I think so, definitely, and even things like babysitting the younger kids, and like having those like friendship, like just the range of ages, just having friendships with people of all different ages. I definitely think you get a lot more exposure to that in a smaller church. You're much more forced to, and I view that as a real benefit.
And in terms of obviously your dad being the pastor, some people experience of that is not great. Some they feel under the spotlight, under scrutiny, got to act up in a certain way. Did you ever feel that kind of pressure? Did you feel that pressure on you from others, or did you not feel that?
No, and to be honest, I never really understood when people would complain about it. Like sometimes I remember going to this group where they were talking about being a PK and how hard it is to be a PK, pastor's kid. And I was like, I think it's great. Like genuinely, I loved being involved in church life, and I loved when I was little, like going in early and helping set up, helping do the tea and coffee with the old ladies and eating the sugar cubes, or and playing in the music band, like when I was older in my teen years, and helping out in Sunday school and helping out in the kids clubs and stuff like that. I don't know in other cultures if there's more of an expectation on like, oh, you're the pastor's kids, you should do this. And I guess maybe the church that we were at was quite international because of the universities there, so we did often have like international students, and maybe every now and again you'd have like some people from other cultures where like we had like a couple that was from Nigeria, and they would talk, Pastor Julian and Mama George, and they were very respectful towards them, and they had that sense of honor and whatnot in their culture. But I think generally people didn't treat my parents like they were something special, therefore that I had to conform to that. I don't, and if they did, I didn't pick up on it. I didn't notice it. And even like I say, the Nigerian couple that did have that kind of honor dynamic, they never made me feel like you're the pastor's daughter, you should behave in a certain way, or no, I don't think so. And me and my sisters, I'm one of four, but we're all very different personalities, and so maybe we have all maybe slightly different takes on it. But certainly, in my experience, I found I'd never really understood what the problem was with being a pastor's kid.
And how do you think life for you, when you've had experience of exposed to middle class churches, how do you think life for you in your mum and dad's church as you're growing is different to where it was based, different to some of those middle class churches? How do you think, is there more a community? Are people in people's lives more, do you think, compared to other churches?
I think there was more exposure to like the struggles of life, and I think I got to see a lot more of I guess I wasn't as sheltered maybe as some people might have experienced. If you grow up in a bigger middle class church, you probably, the impression I get is that you may be just not as exposed to the struggles that people go through, whereas I think my experience was much more I just feel like I probably saw a lot, maybe too much for a kid sometimes. Was aware of a bit too much of some of the stuff that was going on in people's lives and the difficulties. But even that, I don't view that necessarily as a bad thing. Maybe that's specifically because I was the pastor's kid. Maybe if you just went along to a church that was on a council estate as a child, you wouldn't have as much awareness. But in that way. So I think that maybe that was a difference. I don't know. It's hard to say because I didn't grow up in those other churches, so I don't know. I do know that community was a big thing in all the churches that I've gone to and been a part of. And when I had a very short stint of going to a much bigger church, which was for like 3 months before we joined Hope Church Vauxhall, we went to a bigger church that was in the city, the church that was planting Hope Church. We went there to just meet the team and stuff. And I mean, it was a lovely experience. You'd go in and there was great preaching, and you'd sit and you'd listen to great preaching, and you'd go and have a meal afterwards, and then you left and you spoke to a few people, but there was nothing really in the week. I mean, that was partly because we knew we was only going to be there a short time, and we weren't living as local. There are things in the week I know in that church specifically, but yeah, it was very easy to just sort of go in, consume and leave. Whereas I think on a council estate, it's like church, you have to muck in, and everyone mucks in, and you're just very involved in that way. And I do think maybe some of the differences I've noticed with people that have come into to Hope Church when they've come from a like more middle class background, I do think they're a bit more overwhelmed by the amount of like serving that's needed in church. I don't mean that. I think it's just different expectations, just totally different expectations. Whereas for me, like, you're just very standard. It's just like you just go to church and you just
just do it.
Just do whatever needs to be done, and you know, it's just, that's just what I expect of church. And I think even things like the attendance as well. Like, I think being a pastor's kid from a church on a council estate, you knew how much it mattered when people weren't there. You know, you had that awareness. And so, like, it's just drilled in. Like, you just go to church, like, unless you're ill, like, you know, too ill to go, you go the same way that you would go to work, the same way you go to school. Whereas I think the expectations seem a bit different in terms of, like, if you just, like, even for a holiday, like, we'd only want to be away like maybe once or twice a year, 3 times maybe max. Like, I wouldn't, you know, more than that would feel quite weird if I was just going away. But some people, they just have like holidays, or they're going back for this event, family event, or that thing, and I'm not judging that.
No.
But I think it's just a massively different expectation because of the experience of, you know, I think when you're at a bigger church, particularly, you know, and it's not noticeable when you're there or you're not there. There's not as much need. Whereas I think when you're in a smaller church, and you feel it much more when people aren't around.
It's interesting, isn't it? So when our girls have kind of ever gone anywhere to different churches, they've always chatted to people. They've, I don't know, it's always been remarked on to us, like, oh wow, your kids like speak to people, or, you know, they put they're tidying the coffee cups up, or they're talking to the older person in the corner. And when people comment to us and to them, we're like, oh, but they're like a bit shocked. They're like, well, what do they mean, mum? Because like that would be normal, wouldn't it? But you realise
just the expectation.
They're normal because it's what they've done, and but it's not the norm, is it?
No, I don't think so.
Yeah, and it's something that you haven't even taught, like you've said. You've just brought them into ministry, and they're getting on with it. And I think that's probably the uniqueness of being on a council estate with a small amount of numbers, because that's what you say. Your kids go along. There's just not even expectation. They're just there, aren't they? And they're helping. They're putting the chairs out. They're clearing the chairs up. And so, how do you think that has given you the grounding in terms of like the jobs that you've done, the people who you've come alongside? How's that all helped in terms of your ministry?
I think it's helped me to like keep going, in the sense that I think it's helped me to just feel like you do stuff unto the Lord because that's just part of who I am. And it's not like something I do. It's just like who I am. So it's just like, you know, you just, so it's not like, whereas I think sometimes people struggle because they're constantly evaluating what they're doing. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I don't know if that answers your question exactly.
I think there's a lot of like rooted in things, isn't there? Rather than just being natural things that you just do. That's just part and parcel of being in a community in church. It's just what you do. It's it seems to be more kind of contrived, doesn't it? And not
Yeah, and I think it just takes it out of you a lot more. Do you know what I mean? If you're if you are constantly kind of counting up what you're doing, comparing it to like, I don't know, another where you was at another place, or how much someone else is doing, or anything like that. Like, I think it's just the whole mentality of it is just really difficult to maintain when you're just like, okay, look, I'm doing this. Whereas when you're just like, it's just part of who you are, and you're just not really even considering it as a thing. I think it just allows you to just keep going. And like I say, I think as well, maybe as well, it's helped me in my ministry in terms of, I guess really like when you've come from a church where maybe it doesn't look particularly successful,
Yeah.
you're not doing it for the success, you're doing it for the Lord. You're just doing it because you're like, well, this is just, I just want to be faithful to whatever he's called me to, and this is the lot that he's given me, and I'm just going to be faithful in this, whether there's fruit or not, whether it's successful or not. Like, that's not really, that's up to the Lord, really. I just need to just keep, I just want to keep being faithful in whatever he's called me, wherever, however. And I think that's helped me in that sense. And like, Hope Church, like I say, at the moment is, it just feels really blessed and is really thriving. But I don't think that's because of anything we've done. I think it's just because the Lord is kind. Because I know that other times, I've been in other settings where you've kind of done just as much or done the same things, and it's not always had the same results. And that it just shows that the Lord does his work, we do our bit, and the Lord does his work, and we praise him whatever the outcome. And
perspective. Yeah. So a lot of people that I speak to on the courses that I run, or when I'm in different churches, maybe is considering being part of a plant or leading a plant, and the main kind of reservations they have are, well, what about my kids? Taking my kid, that's generally middle class people wanting to with a heart, but any desire, but obviously genuine reservations, which I can understand. Taking uprooting their family and living on a council estate. What would you kind of say to those people to alleviate any of those? Because the reality is, it can be a bit scary, can't it, if you've never experienced that? Your children are maybe going to hear, like you said, my kids probably were exposed to some things earlier than they should have been, but within the context of us protecting them as well. But there's a lot of blessings, isn't there? The blessings outweigh, I think, the fact that you're part of a community, not just in church, but actually living on an estate, like you said, trolleys up and down the road, the community in and out of each other's house. Do you know that you don't get that in other places? So
I think like for me with my kids, sometimes especially being in central inner city London, it's very like can feel very claustrophobic. It's like not a lot of space. I mean, we live in a house, it's like a 3-bed house. And the kids that come to our house think that we live in a mansion because they all live in like 1 or 2 bed flats. And I'm like, do not feel like my house is a mansion at all. It's like we've got a little garden, and it just feels like there is no space for these kids to like run around or anything. And it is a bit different actually where we are now, because you can't really let your kids play out in the same way because it's just central London, and it's just different. And so, like sometimes you can feel like, oh, are my kids suffering because they're, they've not got space, and just like, I don't know, that sort of thing. But the thing that does always like come back to me is the community aspect of it. I think that you end up with they've got so many friends, and we're really blessed as well because there's a school on the estate, it's actually just off the estate, but it's like a genuinely Christian school. Like the head teacher is an actual like genuine believer, and a lot of the staff are, and our church has a lot of like our pastor goes in and does assemblies there and stuff, and there are loads of Christian kids there, and there are like Muslim kids as well, and kids from other like non-faith backgrounds, and staff, but it is like the ethos of the school is very uniquely Christian, so that's a real blessing. And obviously not everyone's going to have that experience. But then again, though, it goes to show God does give you what you need for what your kids need. So that's always like very encouraging. But the community thing, like just knowing that my kids have got so many friends because everyone just lives local, and even though they can't play out as much, like we always have other kids over our house, and they're able to go to other kids' houses, and there's plenty still of like after school clubs, and we most days, especially in the summer, we'll go to school after, pick the kids up from school, all go to the park, everyone will just be in the park, the mums will be there. So like there are tons of benefits in that sense. And I guess coming back to your other question as well, of like what I'd say to somebody who's got some reservations, like I guess the other thing is like it's just like anywhere that Jesus calls us to. Like Jesus doesn't really ever promise us like a nice life or like for our kids to have
Mm,
a nice life.
mm,
But he does promise to be with us wherever we are. And as long as our kids are exposed to Jesus,
mm,
like having him is the most precious gift you can give your children,
mm,
right? Um and for me, like seeing my parents value God and value church and God's ministry and God's work above everything else
mm,
was hugely formative um to my faith. And um I think that seeing like other things be sacrificed because it shows how worth it Jesus is. And
mm,
that's an amazing gift
mm,
to give your children.
mm,
Whereas by saying actually we don't want to we want to have this comfortable life, it's like almost like you're saying that that's better than Jesus,
mm,
which is a terrible thing to tell your children, really,
mm,
in a way. And I'm not saying like so I'm saying to people who feel like they've genuinely got a calling or a sense of like a heart.
yeah,
I'm not
yeah,
saying it's like I'm not saying it's like if you've got a calling to another ministry in another area. I'm not
yeah.
saying that's worse or less than.
No.
I'm just saying, there is a sacrifice element to any time that we follow
Yeah,
Jesus,
yeah.
and there is a getting your hands dirty element. Like
Mm,
there's not a pain-free,
mm,
comfortable way of doing it. So whether that's in a council estate or
mm,
I don't know, in going to some other country or I
yeah,
don't know,
yeah.
whatever it is, like showing that you're prepared to that
Mm,
that you trust that Jesus is actually better and he is enough and he is worth it
mm,
is a great thing, I think, to show your
mm,
children. It's something certainly that I've valued seeing my
mm,
parents do.
mm. I think it's wisdom as well, isn't it? Because so many people kind of that I speak to think it's if we go, we've got to send them to the school on our doorstep. We've got to have them embraced in all the things going on and our, with all the kids.
Mm.
We've got to let them go into our neighbours' houses. We've got to, and actually, you don't have to do that, and it would be
Some
stupid to
neighbours you
do
don't
that.
want to let them into.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And like your dad, mum and dad took the decision, actually, the school, out of the area is going to be the better option,
Yeah,
because the teachers or whatever. Do you know what I mean?
yeah,
That
yeah,
I
yeah,
think there's got to
yeah,
be that balance, hasn't there, within,
yeah,
yeah,
100%.
your children need to know that following Jesus is sacrificial, but you also use wisdom and protection, and you make the right
Oh
choices
yeah, yeah.
for
You don't.
the,
I'm not saying
yeah.
you sacrifice your
No,
children to the world.
that's what I mean. Yeah, yeah,
Different. I mean, you give
yeah,
up maybe a comfortable lifestyle
yeah,
because Jesus is more
yeah.
worth it. But no, there's definitely still, um, yeah, there can be. I guess there's two worries. There's one is like, oh, I don't want my kids, um, to be like tainted by
Tarnished.
the world.
Yeah,
But then there is also sometimes you can get the opposite where it's like you say, like people are just too naive to
yeah,
like the stuff, and it's like that's not that's
yeah,
not a good idea to be
yeah.
allowing yeah, because yeah, and it's like in church as well, like people often like the babies and stuff get passed around and things like that. And I do have to remind people, like, I know that we know each other, but there are really random people that walk into
Mm,
this building. Like, we can't just be,
mm,
it's like nice that we're all like one big family, but also
mm.
there are some people that we do not know who they are or
Yeah,
why
yeah,
they are here. And we can't just have anyone just pick a baby up out
yeah,
of a
yeah.
pram. Like, that's no, like, be switched on, guys. Like,
Mm, mm.
and so, yeah, I guess there are some dangers that can come with the community feel for sure. That if we're not switched
Yeah.
on, that is not good. I mean, we did have in the church I grew up in there, we did have some very dodgy characters,
Mm,
and that is, yeah, you need to be wise and alert and switched on for sure.
mm. So when you got to 18, you went to London.
Mm.
Did you always have it in your mind? Did you feel God leading you to um, being in ministry on council estates in more deprived areas? Was that always your kind of calling? Did it kind of fall into place? Some
Yeah, a
people
bit of,
have been on them, want to get off them and never enter them
yeah,
again.
yeah. I mean, a bit of both. um, um, I Kind of. I didn't exactly feel like a strong sense of this is what God wants me to do, but I've always tried to be like, wherever the Lord wants me, I will try and be open to whatever He wants,
Mm.
wherever He wants. I like had visions at one point of being a missionary abroad and stuff like that.
Mm.
Yeah, but I think that I always knew that I was a woman from a council estate, and that council churches for people in council estates are, I I just I know like how hard they are, how much they need support,
Mm.
and my experiences have mean that it's something that I can do, and so I guess I've always felt in that sense that it's something that I should do or have wanted to do. I'm quite like the parable of the talents is something that I feel like has shaped my life quite a lot in terms of what I do. That idea that God gives you what He gives you, and then you just have to give Him a return on whatever it is that He's given you. And what He has given me is He's made me a woman from as a Christian on a council estate, and He's given me that experience, and that is what I know, and that's what I've grown up in. And so like I want to use that for God's glory and God's kingdom and bring that back to Him. So for me, like, yeah, I guess there was kind of it wasn't a surprise to me that I've ended up on a council estate and I've stayed here. Like I said, I'm always open to whatever the Lord wants me to do. I've never been like, oh, 100% this is where you've got to be now for the rest of your life. Maybe not, but it wouldn't surprise me if I was on council estates the rest of my life doing this kind of ministry. And it's certainly what I'm trying to use the things that He's taught me and given me to input back into His kingdom.
And in terms of kind of women's ministry, how do you think that looks? Maybe it doesn't, maybe it does, looks differently in a council estate or more deprived area to a middle class sort of church. Do you think it looks any different?
Yeah, to be honest, it is very different, and I think I'm still working out. So I guess in the church that I go to at the moment, even though we're on the council estate, culturally it's very, very mixed. So we have really middle class, like even like upper class people, right down to really working class, kind of always lived on the estate, culture, and then also like various African cultures. There's a lot of Eritrean, there's a lot of Latinos in our church, and so it is a real mix. And the discipleship needs are really, really different across the board. I think that I'm definitely most comfortable with the working class. Like I find it a bit easier to disciple those people than really middle class people from like a middle class church background.
In what respect? Why?
I find that a lot harder. I guess partly because it's what I'm used to. I don't understand maybe the struggles or the difficulties as much. I don't know what they need as much when they're from a middle class background. But I think when you're from people that are more from a working class background, I mean, individuals are different personalities as well, aren't they? So everyone's like different. It's hard to generalize fully. I think you kind of have a mixture, but I tend to find that like you do get people with a lot more obvious kind of trauma issues or addiction issues and things like that are much more that need a lot more, well, wisdom and like input from outside sources as well, like stuff that you can't always, you can just kind of walk alongside people, but you can't always fix those things, and it's not your job really to fix those things. So those obviously can make it harder, but in many ways I find the women from the estate like easier because, well, particularly unchurched as well, and I guess this is the difference. Oftentimes I'm assuming that the women that have grown up local in this area or whatever, they're kind of unchurched, and so I think that's a big difference as well, like discipling church people versus unchurched people. But where they are unchurched, they're kind of more of a blank slate to just like, and everything's like new and exciting and fresh for them. So like reading the Bible with people who've not really read read the Bible before is just really amazing, because they just lap it up and they just love it, and they've just got questions, and it's just like, it's just really exciting. Whereas I think when you're more churched, it's just kind of a different dynamic, because
it's hard as well, isn't it? I think that's the like a contentious issue with your own children, because obviously you're like, your children are third generation, aren't they now? You know, Christian family. How do you keep? We all want our kids to know the Lord. We all want to follow Him, but equally we want them to know the realities of the world. It's hard to keep that kind of in touch with people on the estate, unchurched people, but you're also aware that you're churched, aren't you? And it's kind of, I think the longer you've gone in your churched environment,
the harder it is to understand people that aren't churched.
To remember what unchurched was like.
Yeah.
It's difficult, isn't it, to kind of keep that balance sometimes.
And I think that's where you have to also like hope that they will have a desire to equip unchurched people. Do you know what I mean? And like where we have to be really not just trying to keep like, oh, the churched people disciple the unchurched, like the unchurched people, as if it's like those people then need to disciple the next lot. Do you know what I mean? So I think I think being really intentional about the way that we disciple converts to be able to disciple themselves, and that is a long game. Like that's obviously not. Although sometimes it isn't. Like sometimes you just get some people that they just get radically converted, and then they just want to go out and do mission. And I think praise God and like let them do that. Like you just can't be trying to micromanage or that kind of thing.
But generally speaking, it's a longer process, isn't it?
Generally speaking, it's a bit of a longer process, but I think it's one that's worth committing to for that reason, because the longer you have kids that are just growing up in church, they are going to lose that missional power, I guess, if you want to call it that. But I think also, I don't know, I think also things like going to the school and mixing with people and just having that exposure helps.
How, final question just come to me, so obviously you and your sisters growing up, your mum and dad instilling the word of God in you, and that was the most formative thing that you say that your mum and dad wanted for you, obviously, and then kind of education secondary to that. I think what my exposure has been when I've been to more middle class churches, and you've got a mix of people in yours, like you say, they're often kind of driven by academia. And how do you kind of deal with that with your own kids' lives? Like you want them to do obviously well, but you'll be around people whose ideals are for academic progression, and how do you and Shane kind of deal with that for your own children?
Yeah, I mean, we're still working it out. Like Alfie's 8, Hope is 6. And so, I think, to be honest, I'm still kind of working that one out. I think with my own kids, I think looking at their own, for me, the thing that I just always try and want to instill into them is more about the character and like you should work hard, you're going to need to practice at things and do the best that you can do, and try and find the things that they are like gifted in or enjoy and want to support that. But I don't really put academic pressure on them in that way. But in terms of then others that might have that, like, I think it's a bizarre struggle for some people. Like there's some couples in our church who have been privately educated, and a lot of pressure from their external families to like they're raising their kid now. They've chosen to raise their kid on a council estate, and they've got to think those things through, because they're going to have a lot of pressure from their families to like raise their, where they send their kids to school and stuff like that, and the sort of education. I think it's much harder for them because because they've almost like got the option, whereas like, I guess for me and my kids, to be honest, don't get me going to Cambridge anyway. I mean, there's not much. It's not really like it's an option, so it's just like, I want to just focus, like I say, more on them having the character and like hopefully instilling a love of learning in them, although I'm finding that quite difficult, especially in the era of screens and stuff like that. But the hope is to try to instill like a love of learning and just the awareness that, you can't always just do things straight away. You're gonna have to practice, you're gonna have to work hard and do the best that you can do within the abilities that God has given you. That's kind of quite straightforward and simple for me. I think it's I think some of the other families who are more in that situation of how they educate their kids are like much younger, so I don't know, to be honest, we'll have to wait and see how that pans out and the decisions they end up making and whatnot. But I would say, to be honest, in our church, and I think maybe this is a thing with the younger generation, they have bought into the idea, like, and I think one of the things in our church, we try to be very upfront about the purpose of our church and the mission that we're doing, and like if you're not really on board with that, then like, maybe this isn't the right place for you. There's lots of churches in London, and so like we're quite upfront with those conversations at the beginning. So most of the people that are here, they really have actually bought into that, and they bought into that. We're not trying to convince people in a sense, like they get it. They know why they're here and what their purpose is, and so I think for them they have to work those things out. But no, it's not really my experience or expertise to know how to do that. I think in terms of my kids, as well, like I just think everything is a discipleship moment, isn't it? Like when they feel inferior in some way, which we have had a little bit of that to try and manage, and that's hard, like when they've felt like they're not as good at things as others or that sort of thing. I wouldn't exactly say directly within our church context, but that has come up, but I think they're all just discipleship opportunities, aren't they, of being able to like make them think, well, why are we even gifted in anything? What's the purpose of being gifted? Like, it's, if God gives you a gift, you have to use that for his glory, not for your own. And the more gifts you have, in some ways that can be worse, because you'll be more tempted to use that for your own glory and not for God's glory. And so having conversations on that level with my children has been
because it's been interesting for Matt, because there was a point when any time we went anywhere to kind of more middle class church, the first kind of thing anyone would ask them is, they'd be like 14, and which university are you going to go to? University, I haven't even got to my GCSEs. The assumption that you're going to do this, which, and again, that's not a bad thing. Going to university isn't a bad thing. It's just seems to be, the different. We wouldn't have that conversation back in our own church. Do you know what I mean? It wouldn't come on. It's just like the radar, which university you're going to go to. So I think it's quite stark differences. It's
we'll probably come up against. I imagine we'll come up against that more as the kids get older. But
your son might be going to Oxford. You don't know.
I don't know. We never know.
Watch this space.
I think me and Shane have a very different idea as well about education, because he didn't really have much of an education growing up, and then got the opportunities later on in life. I think he values it more. Whereas I think for me, to be honest, when I was finished with school, I was so done with school. Even though I did okay in school, like I wasn't I did fine, but I just never had a desire I never went to uni. I didn't know what I wanted to study, and I felt like everyone that I knew that went to uni, they were coming out of uni and not knowing what jobs they wanted anyway, and not being able to get a job. And I was like, what's the point of this? This is like a lot of money and a lot of time to end up not knowing what you want to do. So I might go to uni still one day. I don't know, maybe like if that's what the Lord wants, but I was always happy with just working, and I just wanted to work, and that suited me fine. So but whereas Jane, I think, really values, education a lot more. So it'll be interesting to see as they get older how we navigate that.
Yeah, the challenges, eh? Oh, well, thank you, Jas, for your time.